we've started a new phase of the trial. The last phase, Brian was found guilty. And as the judge said, in this context, guilt is defined essentially as did he do what the state has alleged. Now we are concerning ourselves with, as we found that he did, what were his underlying mental conditions at the time? And did that mental condition consist of, or was it influenced by a mental disease or defect? And if so, what effect did that have on him and on his ability to make choices, to understand he's making wrong choices, or to stop himself from making wrong choices, even if he knew they were wrong? The state's burden has finished with phase one, and it is now the defense's burden to convince you by the greater weight of credible evidence that there was a mental disease or defect, and that it caused Brian Flatoff not to either know what he was doing was wrong or not to be able to control his behavior. And I hope as we hear testimony this morning that you will hold the defense to our burden, just as you held the state to their burden. That you will carefully consider the evidence and you will carefully apply it to the standards with which the judge has already given you and which will be further elaborated in your instructions before deliberation. You're going to hear the testimony of Dr. Glassman this morning. He was appointed by the court to perform an evaluation of Brian and to ultimately give an opinion as to whether he thought Brian met the legal standard for not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect, or NGI, as you'll hear. You've heard it referred to, and you'll hear it again, I'm sure. There's going to be a lot of discussion about potential diagnoses or diagnoses that were considered and not made. And Dr. Glassman certainly has the education and training to make those diagnoses and to consider them. And he's reached a conclusion on the issue of NGI. He does not believe Mr. Flatoff, in fact, was NGI at the time of the events on December 5th. But that conclusion does not have to be your conclusion. His conclusion needs to be supported. His conclusion needs to convince you that it is more convincing than evidence that shows that Brian was NGI during the events on December 5th. So as you listen to his testimony, I encourage you to take it in that light. Dr. Glassman has the benefit of experience, training, and education. One of the ways I believe that he's limited, though, is he did not know Brian Flatoff during the weeks, months, years leading up to December 5th. You will hear testimony from, again, Eva Lawson-Kransky. She took him to many of his doctor's appointments. In fact, you'll hear testimony that it was at her insistence that Brian finally started to seek mental health treatment. You will hear her describe what she viewed as his symptoms. Symptoms that were reported before he found himself in legal trouble. I know there is a tendency to think of NGI or insanity as the easy way out, as an excuse, as a, I didn't do it. That's not the truth. The law requires that if someone's going to be held accountable criminally for their actions, they have to have the ability to control those actions. And if not, the law holds they cannot be held accountable. So as you listen to the testimony, try to remove from your minds ideas of people avoiding responsibility and assess the evidence that's presented to you fairly. Is it convincing? Is it not? If it's convincing, apply it as the law demands. And again, I encourage you to hold me to the burden that the defense has. And as you hear the testimony, it's my belief that you will find that we've met it.